Alice in Marketing Wonderland by Aladdin Esseldine, founder of Campaignalyzer. This story is based on the famous story Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and is rewritten for the digital marketing and web analytics community's amusement. Chapter 1. Down the Rabbit Hole. While sitting in the office, staring at their website's hits reports and other drowns of data, both Alice and her colleague try unsuccessfully to derive some insight from all the lengthy nonsense information. Suddenly, Alice spots a white rabbit running by. He's wearing a waistcoat and holding a timepiece in his hand, mumbling to himself, oh dear, I cannot be late." Now, with this strangely absurd situation unfolding in front of her, Alice lets her curiosity get the best of her and follows the rabbit into a nearby hole. Once in the rabbit hole, Alice finds herself in a strange hall. It has many doors of all colours and sizes. There's a large purple door with the words Search Engine Optimization on it. A tiny door titled Web Analytics, and yet an even smaller door called Social Media Marketing. There's also a large fancy door titled Paid Search. One by one, she tries each door, but unfortunately they are all locked. Her disappointment quickly turns to excitement as she spots a three-legged table on which a little golden key lies. It works on the orange door. Alice quickly opens the door, which leads into a small passageway. At the end of the passageway, she discovers the most beautiful garden. It's like a digital marketing wonderland. But to her disappointment, she's too big to fit through the door. As she wanders back, she finds a little book sitting on the table with a "Read Me" note attached. Alice begins to read, and she feels herself shrinking until she is only 10 inches tall. Perfect! She's now just the right size to enter the door to the garden and into this new and exciting digital world. Chapter 2. The Analytics Garden. As Alice enters the garden, she is amazed by its beautiful trees, hills, lush greenery and waterfalls. The trees tower over the 10-inch Alice, as she is much too small to reach the fruit they bear. Alice begins to cry, then suddenly spots a small box containing a miniature cake marked "Eat Me." Hoping this will make her grow back to her normal size, she gobbles up the cake. Suddenly, she can feel herself growing and growing until she reaches the clouds. Now she can eat all the wonderful fruit in the garden. Even though she's never seen most of these sorts of fruit before, she remembers learning about some of them from the little book in the hall. There are seeds inside the fruit that contain pieces of paper similar to that of a fortune cookie. Alice enjoys reading the notes almost more than the fruit itself. What is the bounce rate of those who visited your website in the past 15 days? And what is the conversion rate for your repeat US visitors? How many blog readers visit the marketing pages? And what is the behaviour of first-time visitors to your site? Alice eats and reads more. How many visitors converted to buyers within their 30-day trial period? And what is the impact of social media on email subscriptions? How does display advertising contribute to brand awareness? Alice remembers back to her colleague Heidi, who is struggling with her website reports and is overwhelmed with information. She thinks about how Heidi would be very interested to learn more about this new way of looking at data from the little book and the fruit notes. Chapter 3. The Pool of Tears. Alice decides to share this information with Heidi and quickly collects all the notes. She rushes back to the rabbit hole, only to discover that she's too big to fit through the passage and through the orange analytics door. Alice cries and cries, then realises there is a pool of water surrounding her. As she floats through this pool of tears, Alice encounters many unique creatures, including a little mouse who has fallen into the water. Alice frightens the mouse as she begins to scream for him to help her save the notes from getting wet. Suddenly, the White Rabbit floats into view. He is riding on a small boat and carrying a bottle. Alice quickly asks him for help, but the rabbit, scared this large girl will flip his boat, throws the bottle to her and quickly paddles away. On the bottle is a note reading, "Drink me." Alice gulps the liquid down and shrinks to fit through the small analytics door. But not only is she the right size, she now has wings too. Chapter 4. Golden Advice from an Owl. Alice can fly home, but she just isn't sure which way to go. As she flutters around, Alice meets an old owl perched on the top of a tree. Who are you?" the owl asks. Alice seems rather confused as she replies, "I'm not quite sure. Sometimes I'm large and sometimes I'm small." The two exchange more questions of each other, only for Alice to become irritated by the old owl. For each time he speaks, he makes short remarks. "I can't remember things as they used to be," says Alice. The old owl asks her to repeat after him. "I am a web analyst. I am a web analytics ninja." But Alice is taken back by how strange this initially sounds. Alice begins explaining to the old owl about her story and her struggle with data in the past. She goes on to tell him how her unfinished adventure in this marketing wonderland has changed her perspective, and how she looks at data differently now. The wise old owl listens carefully, and once Alice is done with her story, he raises his head and says, "My dear, as a web analytics veteran, I would like to advise you. As you may have learned today, collecting questions and web data has never been the issue for analysts. Collecting meaningful and accurate data has." He goes on, "You need to pay extra attention to the marketing attribution and how your site visitors end up on your site. That will enable you to make better budget allocation decisions across channels, and hence better returns." The wise old owl continues, "Be sure that you are tagging all your marketing campaigns with proper tagging parameters. I understand the tagging process can be overwhelming because it is very manual by nature, but I recently heard about a new application called Campaignalyzer that claims to streamline and simplifies the tagging process. I believe the website address where you can find this gem is..." But before the owl is able to continue, a large eagle swoops down and reaches out to attack Alice. As the eagle is just inches away from a frightened Alice, she quickly tries to fly away. Suddenly, she finds herself lying on the floor back in her office, as Heidi is swarming around her trying to swat a fly with a bunch of papers. Just then, Alice realises that everything was just a dream. She excitedly tells Heidi about her adventure. As Alice runs off to get some tea, Heidi thinks about the wonderful dream. She drifts off to sleep and finds herself in the digital marketing wonderland. For more information, please visit www.campaignalyzer.com.